Righto, Kane, let's get started. We've had a couple of hours of the round ball game and it's been fun. And as Archie said, he's going to watch the Copa America. But yeah, we'll come back to the AFL and round 18 and what a fantastic round it was. The first one I want to touch on is the Western Bulldogs, and we spoke briefly about them earlier, but there was question marks about their offence and whether they could move the ball effectively into a front six and score heavily enough. But against Carlton on the weekend in their last couple of weeks, they've been excellent. They've been building steadily, and Luke Beveridge was pretty happy with what he saw from his charges.
Pretty moved by that one. Obviously coming out of last week where you can throw up all adjectives to describe what it was and what it wasn't, and so hopefully we can do a little bit with it. But I sit here as the senior coach of the footy club with so many other people contributing to helping the players. Just tremendously proud of what the boys were able to do this afternoon. It was a great victory for the club.
And so you should be pleased. After being well scrutinised earlier in the year, they now have the third best percentage in the competition. They're sitting at 10th. One game from 7th and a couple of wins from 4th, but that is the closeness of this competition at the moment. But more so without Treloar, without Norton, they were able to produce an offensive performance. Now, Carlton give you a look on that side of the ball, but the question mark has always been about the Dogs. How effective are they going to be inside 50? They had 56 inside 50s. They were able to score 100 points for the second week in a row. They got well beaten the week before by Port, but over the last 6 or 7 rounds, they've just had players that have popped up. So Riley West has been excellent, kicked 4 on the weekend. When Waitman's in the side, the work that those two undersized forwards do to allow their talls to go and attack. So there's a lot of blocking off ball that they've worked on, little craft elements that make them dangerous to play on. And then
are they too tall?
And then
usually
they can finish
when
themselves.
They play all three. So when Norton isn't there, and you have that setup which they had in their forward six with Darcy and Ugle-Hagan and the two dangerous smalls, although Waitman doesn't play small, he played talls as well. It looks a better balance, doesn't it? And that's why the debate about Norton going to centre-half back, or whether that's Darcy going to centre-half back, or one of them going to centre-half back, is always going to be there.
Well, they've got... There's only 2 teams that have more than 4 20-plus goal kickers in their team to date. One of them is Sydney, and the other is the Western Bulldogs. But they both have 6. So Riley West is one. Ugle-Hagan, Waitman himself, Bontempelli. Then who else have we got there?
How many's Darcy kicked?
Yeah, Darcy's in that mix as well, and there's and obviously Norton himself. So without Norton's missed 4 games. They've averaged 100 points a game. With Norton in the side, they've averaged 90. Now that doesn't seem significant, and it's not altogether significant. But there's an argument that they do look a little bit more dynamic and more balanced with just a couple of tools, and Darcy and Ugle-Hagan have provided plenty of that, with a bit of more of a small balance, more dynamic when they go forward. 56 inside 50s against Carlton was a great effect. And when you've got a Bailey Dale running off the back and a Bontempelli who can play centre forward a little bit more, you're actually asking, like Cincotta went to Bont early and did pretty well, but then after half time they thought Bailey Dale's doing so much damage that we need to send Cincotta across to him. So you're asking some questions of the opposition. You've got some hurt factor in different places. They have a makeshift defence. Lob's gone back.
Yep.
Karmas did all right, but then gave up 10 shots on goal to Curnow.
But he took 5 intercept marks himself and won a number of one-on-ones. And Curnow, a lot of his shots were from difficult spots, either far out. But yeah, you're right. If Curnow kicks accurately or kicks 6 goals 4 instead of 3-7, then Carlton
it's over.
Just a word on the Blues, because I get the sense that you have some concerns over them defensively.
I was going to go. Well, they're the 4th worst defence.
Well,
they're 15th. It's only Richmond, North Melbourne and West Coast have allowed more points scored against than Carlton. So that's not the they're the second in the comp, but that's not the profile if you want to go forward and win finals. But I don't have any fears for it. A lot of it is out of defensive 50 stoppages, and they allowed too many of those over the course of this season, and in particular yesterday. But on the weekend. But I don't think it's a hard fix. I think they can tighten up a little bit, and they still play at a very high level. I think they've got a lot of hurt factor through the midfield, through forward. Defensively, I think you can tighten up and flick a switch on that. I wouldn't be concerned if I was a Blues fan, because all of the games they play in a high quality and they're playing at a high level. It's just a slight adjustment, and I think it has to happen now over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But I don't think it's one that is out of their capability, so I wouldn't be that concerned.
All right, just for the Dogs, huge game against Geelong in Geelong GMHBA, so we'll see how they go away from Marvel. Then it's Sydney in Sydney, then it's Melbourne at Marvel, then it's Adelaide in Adelaide. So a huge month coming up for the Dogs. You want to move on to the Hawks?
Yeah, the second point for me was the Hawthorn Fremantle game. So if we saw the high transition, ball zinging around between Carlton and the Western Bulldogs, then you go down to Tassie, and it was like a game of chess watching Hawthorn play Fremantle. So Hawthorn had 42 insides and were able to kick a winning score against Fremantle, who had just the 45, and it was mainly let's move the ball, how we can defend it from both of those sides. And I thought it was a win of real maturity from Hawthorn, and it really franked their bona fides and what they've been able to put together in the last 10 weeks, I suppose, and their form has been as good as any despite their personnel challenges that I suppose all teams have had at times. But Sam Mitchell was particularly happy with the way they finished the game.
Yeah, I was really pleased that the boys were able to play with some confidence, and I think to be the team we want to be, you're going to have to get over the travel barrier, and I think the same of every team. We didn't handle it well last week down in Geelong, and I thought Fremantle played some pretty good footy today. Maybe it was the edge we needed.
And he's right. Fremantle played really well. Up till three-quarter time, they looked the dominant team. They looked like they'd put the Hawks to sleep in the third quarter. 4-2, and Hawthorn took their chances when they went forward, but they controlled field position, Fremantle. They had plenty of options forward. Sicily looked like he was getting done over by Voss or whoever he was playing on. The move was made late in that third quarter, and that really was a significant move in the game. So Sicily has done that before. Did it against North Melbourne earlier in the year. Kicked a goal late in the third, kicked two in the last quarter, and looked to be the match winner. So that was excellent coaching and an aggressive shift to try and change the game and change it up. And you have to back someone to come and play that role. Weddle, Scrimshaw are undersized defenders. And Jath as well, who went back to support that. But they're undersized defenders, but they're getting the job done undersized and allowed their skipper to go forward and kick a few. I thought they lifted their intensity in the last quarter. Their mids got to work, and they had young players that stood up and had key moments. Deer forward of the ball looks dangerous. Watson, it was great to see him work. Like, his work rate's been great. He just hasn't been able to finish. Some would suggest he's called the wizard because he turns goals into points. Don't
worry, he'll be fine. He's got the mentality that he'll be fine. And you can
he's
see
hungry, isn't he?
The reason you say he'll be fine, because you look at the way he's field kicking. Like, his field kicking is beautiful. That will absolutely translate. He's an excellent finisher as a junior. We've seen that he loves the big moment. He should have kicked one from 50 on the junction from the other side, which was touched on the line, which shouldn't have been. It should have been shepherded through. So if he kicks two big goals from the boundary line, then we're going, we're not too worried about his finishing now. So they found one there. They're probably still a little bit undersized in defence, and you can see the reasons why they're chasing Josh Battle, which would be an excellent addition, but it's not going to help them this year, clearly. But I just love the spirit that they play with, the brand of football, the run from half-back, how tough they are inside. A number of times Fremantle won first possession. Hawthorn were able to strip them and then get outside of them, and that midfield led by Will Day is absolutely flying. So this game on Saturday twilight against Collingwood, it'll probably end the Magpies season. Right now they're in 12th. And
one or the other.
Yeah, they have a tough draw as well. So a midi final in round 19. How good's that going to be? Let's move on to point 3.
And point 4 is about 8-point game, so we'll get to that. But the third point I thought is no Max, no worries. I made a somewhat flippant comment about Ruckman being overrated on Friday night.
How was that received? I was watching that. I thought it was a good opinion, a strong opinion.
Yeah, look, and I think that there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that there's support to back that up. I mean, Ruckman are an important part of a game, but I think the ruck aspect of their role is sometimes overrated. And Melbourne were able to, without Max Gawn, who has been considered, clearly the number one ruckman in the competition over a number of times. He's had some he's had some contenders for the title in Brodie Grundy, probably mainly over the last 6 or 7 years, but he has stood atop that role in particular, and he's been one of the best players in the competition. But Melbourne were able to win without him. They were able to, forget about the narrative around not being able to win without their skipper, without their best player, two best players with Petrarca as well. And Simon Goodwin was particularly happy with the performance.
Yeah, obviously different. I think it's unpredictable for us, but it's also unpredictable for the opposition. I think, when you don't have a dominant ruckman like Max, you sort of plan a little bit differently for the opposition. So that gave us an opportunity to do that.
There's no doubt. So Petty and Van Rooyen were the ones that were able to do the role, and Turner was slated to play a little bit of game time there as well.
Lose hit-outs by 15. Dominate clearance, dominate scores from stoppage.
Yeah.
So what you said is backed up.
Yeah,
I know
and
it's a small size, but...
And then that is an example of it. So, so the hit-outs didn't go their way, but they won clearances by 12 and scored 14 points more from stoppage. So, look, it is a part of the game, and you want to get marginal improvements in everything that you're doing, but I think you take away your skipper's leadership and energy. That was probably just as much of a hurdle to get over as it was his ruck craft. His aerial capability in front of and behind the ball when he gets his opportunities is definitely... Spanish team are getting handed the cup and celebrating now, and the crowd here is going nuts. But Craig McRae there speaking about time running out for Collingwood, and any of the sides between 9th and 13th. At the moment, it's Port Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast Suns, Collingwood and Hawthorn. It's so log-jammed and jam-packed. My fourth point is around 8-point games, and we hear that thrown around a lot. There were 5 8-point games on the weekend. Melbourne were able to beat the Bombers. The Dogs were able to beat Carlton. Geelong were able to beat Collingwood. The Hawks beat Freo, and the Suns beat Port. So, I think I put Sydney out there. They're 3 games clear, so they're not really in 8-point games. They're just, I suppose, holding everyone at bay. But anyone between 2nd and 13th, you're in an 8-point game. And Brad Scott also had this to say about the evenness of the competition. They beat Collingwood 2 weeks ago, lost to Melbourne on the weekend, and they, even with their percentage, are in a precarious position despite being in 6th spot in the ladder.
I don't even need to say anything. I think it's I've been saying it every week, but the evidence is mounting up to support that.
Off the back of that, does that make this a serious missed opportunity then? Yeah,
but it's just 4 points. I mean, it's no different to any other game. The competition is just, it's what it is. And as I said, I've said a number of times, the AFL almost lecture us about competitive balance on a regular basis, and they've got what they wanted.
And that's it. And it is. I think it's what everyone wants. Everyone wants to. You want as many of the clubs to be in the hunt as you possibly can, and you're going to looking at the schedule going forward over the next 6 weeks. There's a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 6 8-point games, games that are impactful.
So have we sucked it up too much about, as the club's cried too much about the competitive balance all year, and one state getting an advantage and other teams getting an advantage, and father-sons, they've done a great job. Is that exactly what we're saying?
Well, Gil ran on this. This was his platform. And he's a betting man, and he was talking about, I want $1.90 versus $1.90 as often as I possibly can. We want as many even money games as we possibly can get from that perspective. So, to a large degree, you've got to say that you're getting that. I mean, Crows have underperformed. St Kilda have underperformed. West Coast Eagles, North Melbourne and Richmond have been at the bottom and are, not going to contend for the final 8. But even North Melbourne are not an easy beat at the moment. Richmond, when Tom Lynch comes back, you catch them at the wrong time, they'll pop up. They're one of the few to beat Sydney this year. So the competition is even, and we are going to get. I mean, next week you've got Suns head away to NG Stadium to play the Giants, and Suns just haven't been away from home, so that becomes an important game. We've seen the Hawthorn Collingwood one, we've spoken about that already. The Dogs head down the freeway to play Geelong down at their ground. Sydney go up to the Gabba to play the Lions, and Melbourne go across to WA to play Freo. So 5 games that that are going to have significant impact on what happens when the music stops at the end of round 24. Essendon themselves, in the next 2 weeks, they've got games but they potentially should win. And then they've got these 4 8-point games in a row at the end of the year when they play Freo at the MCG, they play Suns at Marvel, they play Sydney at Marvel, and then they go up and play Brisbane up at the Gabba at the end. So it's so marginal. And in the end, your percentage is going to count. Essendon's percentage is going to count. It's the lowest in the top 8. Hawthorn's percentage may hurt them at 95%, even if they get the win. So it's just, I just think it's great to watch and to witness because it's going to be up for grabs right to the end. Top 2, top 4 and top 8. The fifth thing I want to talk about, and this could go anywhere because we had Ankit ring in earlier around tackling and everyone's got an opinion on it, and because it's in headlines and because it's been so speculated, and I heard Kingy on First Crack last night talk about chicken wing tackles and how that's come about. We're not going to get this perfect. You're not going to get it 100% right. But I like what the AFL have done in regards to reducing reasonable time. So in some way what you've said is you've still got prior, but we're giving you less prior and less wriggle room, the ball carrier, than you've had in the past. Because pretty much there was a lot of guys that were getting tackled that were prepared to hatch it and take the stoppage, and the umpires were falling into that. There wasn't enough of a balance between the ball winner and the skill of tackling. And I see that the skill of tackling is now being brought up on at least an even keel with ball winning, so that if you tackle well and if you tackle effectively, which is difficult because you can catch guys high, you can catch guys low, you can be too aggressive in your tackle and be suspended. We've seen that happen often enough. And you've actually, as the ball carrier, the ball winner, you can take evasive action to beat a tackle. And we should see that. We want to see that element of the game, just like a marking contest. We want to see that as even as we possibly can see it. And I think it is, the parity has been brought to light a little bit better since this rule change has come about. And I love it. I think it's opened the game up even more. It's asked the ball carriers to make decisions rather than hatching the ball. And I think we're seeing good tackles rewarded for the most part.
Yeah, I don't mind it, other than the one where a player has one arm free and then that can't be a ball up. Who's decided that can't be a ball up? Why is that suddenly a thing? Just halfway through the season, where you've got one arm pinned, you've just picked it up, you've got no prior, you've got one arm free. So they're saying you've got to at least try and kick it. That's impossible to do if you are being slung off balance. You've got one arm and you're trying to throw it up and kick it. I just think that is unrealistic, and those that have made that rule don't have a great feel for the game. Why can't that just be a ball up? If you've got no prior and you're tackled, regardless if you've got one arm free, ball it up. Blow your whistle quickly and ball it up.
I like the fact that we have less ball, the way that it is being adjudicated, you have less ball ups. I'd prefer that either the player gets the ball away with an effective kick, or if he hasn't had prior an attempted disposal, that's the grey area for me, that I would even take that away. You either dispose of the ball or you don't. It's an effective tackle or it's not. I'd rather have...
You don't want the makes an attempt even, and it's ineffective, and that's play on.
Yeah, well, I think that if there's going to be grey area in the middle where there might be a ball up. Now, there's going to be times when it's an effective tackle, the ball's held to a player when he hasn't had prior and he can't make any attempt. I understand that that's going to happen at times, but I reckon that's an umpire discretion as to, well, that was an instantaneous tackle, you had no chance of disposing of it, that's when a ball up. But I'd like to see less ball ups from tackle situations, because I think that slows the game down. It allows congestion to build, and I think the reasonable time trimming has actually... We've had less times when it's a ball up. We've had less times when we've put it back into a contested situation. There's been more open play, and I think that's a win-win-win.